Hello and welcome to Read the Last Page,
A Yap Session,
book club.
We're their two favorite long-distance best friends.
The book we read this month is Turtles All the Way Down by John Green.
In 2018, we each read it separately, but this month we decided to reread it together. And since we finally read the last page, let's talk about it. Hi, B, how are you?
I am good. I'm back in New York.
Yay.
I got a different POV, but this is my same bedroom. My boyfriend Seiji is with me. He's actually in the room as we record this, but okay, he has headphones on, but I think he can still hear me.
Yeah, a little vulnerable.
Yeah, we don't have a couch at my apartment, so there's nowhere comfortable to sit, so he's on the floor. Sorry.
Sorry, Sage. That's funny.
But yeah, I'm back home.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird. When I was just at that dance intensive, and I was thinking about, like, okay, like, tomorrow I fly home, and by home, I meant New York, but then I was like, but home is, like, where my mommy and daddy are. You know, like, I was just like, oh, this is the first time that, like, I'm thinking of home as somewhere other than, like, my parents' house.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You know what?
It was, like, a weird feeling.
I remember when I first went off to college and you stayed in our hometown because you didn't live on campus.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, I think the first time I said to you, like, oh, I'm going to go home, and I was referring to my college campus, you were like, Danielle, every time you say that, I get so offended. Like, I'm not referring to our hometown.
Right, because home is where the B is, right?
Yeah,
you know?
I know, exactly. Girl, exactly. But now New York would be my home, so.
Oh, true. Okay. Well.
And I've never been there, so it doesn't apply anymore. That's so sad.
Yeah. But, yeah, how are you doing, Dan?
Oh, I'm good. Oh my gosh, all of a sudden I'm like, do I have any anecdote to share? Like, no. I'm pretty good. I'm excited to talk to you because I feel like we haven't been able to talk in a hot second. It's been almost a month since we recorded our last one because people don't know.
Yeah.
But we had to do it early because you went to Omaha, yeah?
Right, yeah.
And yeah, so like we record things about every 2 weeks or so, and this one's been a little bit longer. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
Happy to see your face.
Yeah. True, me too. And because, like, we normally... remember that, for everyone listening, remember this was born out of the fact that we send each other really long voice memos.
Yeah.
But, like, I haven't really been able to send a voice memo much because I was working at this dance intensive, and, like, I kind of was on the clock 24/7, except for, like, 10 p.m. when everyone goes to bed, but it's like I wasn't gonna, like, talk on my, send a voice memo when, like, the girl right next to me is trying to sleep.
Yeah.
Like, in the room right next to me. Also, I want to do a disclaimer for anyone watching the YouTube video. I have my glasses on today, and they don't have the anti-reflective stuff, so if you see my eyes looking like this, I'm sorry. I'm trying to, like, keep it to where you can see my eyes, but I might not stare at myself the whole video, so
you're
sorry
good.
if it's distracting.
I was gonna say, speaking of voice messages, I was looking through my Twitter the other day, and I found, like, I tweeted that we were sending each other, like, a 25-minute voice note, and I was like, literally only Danielle and Laura things, and Sage literally commented on that tweet, and he said, you guys need to start a podcast with the amount of time you spend on voice memos. And I said that would be literally 6 hours long if we were in a room together.
Oh my gosh.
And I took a screenshot because I was like, I love that. Sage is, like, so, like, he was really planting the seed.
Yeah, he was the OG stan then.
Oh my god, exactly. So
That's amazing.
It fits that he's technically our first guest right now, even though he's not going to speak a word into this mic. He can come on.
Yeah. Sage, you want to say something?
Slay.
Did you hear that?
I caught it. I don't know.
Okay, if you heard it, then the mic probably picked it up. But
that's true.
We're talking about how you tweeted one time on Twitter, said that Danielle and I should make a podcast, and now we are.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he should be our manager. We're gonna get him on.
True. He's our, like, designer, basically.
No, he's been like the only other person involved in this. Like, truly, he's a part of the team.
Yeah, that's so crazy.
Yeah.
Twitter, if anyone ever needs to catch up on our lore, Twitter's the place.
Twitter's the place for real. Oh my god, we live on Twitter. Yeah. Yeah, we were born and we thrived on Twitter for a good 6 years, I'd say. We had a good run.
Yeah. I feel like we're bringing it back.
Me too. The only reason why I tweet is because I'm like, ugh, I hope Laura sees this.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. My email, I need to figure this out, but my email sends me notifications every time you like
Tweet?
DM me or retweet my stuff. I'm like, okay, like
It's just me?
well, I think it might be everyone, but it's like mostly you're the one that's
Because I'm
DMing
engaging.
me, so.
I'm engaging with the content.
Yeah.
Trust.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. Also, just speaking of this dance intensive, there were 3 girls that stayed there like the whole time. And on the last day, I'm gonna cover up their names.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna flash this so no one can read their names. Ah! My gosh, it's stuck on my cord. Sorry. They wrote me a note.
Really?
It was so nice. Yeah. They like were all giggling in their room, like I was like, what's going on? And they're like banging on my door, and I was like, guys, because we got a noise complaint one night. And so I didn't want us to get another noise complaint, and I was like, what's going on? Like, what do you need? And they were like, we wrote you this note. It's so sweet.
And how old were the people you were not babysitting?
Babysitting.
You were watching over or being like, what is it, like a counselor?
I don't know, being the RA of
yeah.
There's no good word for it.
Like they're like teenagers.
They were like 14 to 16.
Yeah, okay, so young crowd.
Yeah,
That's sweet. That's very sweet.
Yeah, they were super awesome.
Good.
Yeah. Okay, so shall we dive right in?
Get into it?
Turtles
Yeah.
all the way down.
Yeah, so let's also give our quick little disclaimer that this is going to be a spoiler-filled discussion.
Yes.
If you guys don't know what Turtles All the Way Down is about, it's by John Green. Yeah. Let's pull this book up.
Hey.
Yeah, so it's by John Green. It's a book that really heavily talks about mental illnesses and specifically OCD. And it's about a girl named Aza, and she is it just talks about her journey as she, I don't know, it's just coming, I don't even know how to explain
Yeah,
it.
it's like a coming of age book.
Yeah. So it's a really great book if you guys want to read it. I think Laura and I both really love it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you haven't read it, that was a really bad way to say go read it, but go read it and then come back
read it.
and then we'll talk about it more.
We said that at the same time.
Yeah. I was just going to say John Green books are really hard to condense into a really quick summary. I wasn't prepared, but it's mostly just vibes if you're familiar with his writing.
Because like it is about her kind of navigating like her OCD and stuff, but then there's like this also a tiny hint of like mystery.
I know,
like, tiny.
Yeah.
But I would not consider this like a mystery book in any sense.
Yeah.
But there is kind of that element in there. Which is
the story really kicks off with like the disappearance of Aza's old friend, Davis.
Right.
Or old friend's father.
His
sorry.
dad.
Yeah. Sorry, I missed that.
I was like,
I was like, actually, there's a word missing in there. I couldn't tell. I was like, the most important one, maybe. But yeah, his dad goes missing, and so that's kind of where the story starts. But it's not about that. So it's like hard to describe.
Right.
But yeah. Okay, so I kind of wanted, when talking about this book, I thought it would be like a good way to begin our discussion with talking about our history with John Green, maybe.
Okay.
Kind of, because if you guys know us, we love the Green Brothers, and actually the reason why we started this is because of the Green Brothers.
Yeah, the Vlog Brothers.
Yeah, we've been talking about it for years, actually, about having a YouTube channel where we would do something kind of like the Vlog Brothers, where just like they just make videos to each other.
Yeah,
sorry, go.
No, you're good. I was just gonna say, like, the way that their YouTube channel started was like, I don't even know how long ago it was. I want to say 10, maybe 15 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
for sure. It's been a while, but 15 seems long. But anyways, they were living in different states.
Mm-hmm.
And this was before, obviously, the internet was around. But I feel like we're so, like, with social media and stuff, everyone's so connected all the time now.
Mm-hmm.
But they were like, what if we, like, took out, like, all texting, all calls, everything, and they only communicated through these YouTube videos to each other that they would post, like, I don't know, I think once a week. I don't really remember for sure. But anyways, so yeah, Danielle and I took inspiration from their
communication,
their format. Which like they obviously they text and call now. I think they did it for like a year maybe.
Yeah,
I don't remember exactly how long. But we were like, what if we like had a channel where we like, that is where we like catch up with each other, and instead of like the 30-minute voice memos.
We just did this.
Yeah.
Which,
anyways, shouts out to the Green Brothers.
For real. I feel like though we always wanted to do something like what the Green Brothers do, but ultimately the Green Brothers, their channel expanded beyond just their catching up. And like they're two people who are wildly smart and intelligent, and like they can hold their own in a 10-minute video where they're just talking about whatever they want to talk about. And I feel like it's so much better for me and you to be on online
we
together.
need to be talking back and forth.
Yeah, because we'll just go on tangents which have nothing to do with anything.
Right. Yeah, we're keeping each other on topic a little bit.
So what was the first John Green book you read?
I actually think the first one I read was not Looking for Alaska. The Fault in Our Stars.
Yeah, me too.
I think that was the first one.
Yeah, you read that our freshman year of high school, 15?
Probably, yeah. I know I read it before the movie came out. Yeah, I don't think I would have read it in middle school. So it probably was our freshman year.
I actually remember walking the halls of our high school with you, and you were talking to me about this, because I read it first. So I remember reading it first, and I don't think I recommended it to you. I think the reason why you read it was just because it was, like, everyone was reading it. And so I remember you saying something about how either you don't typically get emotional over books, or you weren't expecting to like it as much, and like you got emotional over that book. And I was just like, because I remember you're like, I don't know, I don't really get emotional over books, and I was like, girl, trust. Like, it's gonna get you. And then when you were like, okay, so I did cry, I was like, exactly. But yeah, I do remember, I do have a memory of us walking down the hall talking about it in high school.
That's so sweet.
I know, it's so John Green. To think about two characters walking down the hall talking about books together.
You're so right. And I got that book. I own that book now. My mom's best friend like gave it to me for Christmas, probably like the year after I read it. And I think I have all of John Green's books now. This one, Turtles All the Way Down, did you give me this?
I don't know.
I don't remember.
No, maybe I did. Is it signed? No,
that was one of Hank's books.
Yeah, I got you Hank's first book and second book.
I don't remember who got me this. I feel like it was probably you, Sage, or one of my sisters. But this one's like a hard copy that's new. But his other books I've like just found at the thrift stores, and so now I have all of them. The only one I haven't read, I believe, is like Will Grayson, which is the one that's written with a couple other authors. I haven't read that one yet, but I've read the other ones.
Yeah, I haven't read, there are a couple I haven't read of his. I haven't read Will Grayson. I haven't read Let It Snow, and then I haven't read...
Oh, wait. I haven't read that one either.
Yeah, that one's also with two other authors. And so I think Will Grayson's with David Leviathan, ? Don't take my word for that. But
that's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, and then I haven't read Abundance of Catherine's.
Really?
I know. It feels like I should.
Interesting.
I feel like I should.
Yeah,
but I haven't.
I've read that one. I have it.
Really?
So you can borrow it if you want.
Maybe I should do it. It feels like one that is, because so I the first John Green book I read was The Fault in Our Stars, and I do consider it one of like the founding texts of like who I am as a person. You know, like it's like you should read it if you want to know who I am. But but one thing about me is I don't love when John Green gets sad. like I don't love his sadder books as much as I like his more hopeful books, which I think all his books are
Yeah.
ultimately hopeful. But I think The Fault in Our Stars and Looking for Alaska lean more on cynical, maybe, or like devastating.
Yeah,
And
I
so-
definitely felt like looking for a. Wait.
Mhm.
I'm trying to remember which book is which.
Yeah,
Which is the one where he's like at the boarding school?
Yeah, that's Looking for Alaska.
Okay, yeah. That one was definitely very sad.
Yeah, that was a hard read. And
Yeah.
so it's honestly it's kind of hard for me to wrap my mind around like Turtles being written by the same guy who did Looking for Alaska, because
Yeah.
the tone of it I feel like is so different. And I prefer when he leans towards more lighthearted. I'm not saying this book's lighthearted, but it's not as it's not as in the trenches.
It's not as heavy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I'd like An Abundance of Catherine, because I don't think that book's as
Yeah, I don't think so either. It's kind of very like, it almost feels kind of random.
Oh yeah, love that.
Like in a good way. Like,
yeah, I love that.
When I was reading it, I was just like, okay.
Yeah, well, because it's definitely not in like his core three. I would say his core three are like Fault in Our Stars, Paper Towns, and Looking for Alaska. And then he has all these other side projects that like are just like him kind of doing whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Interesting. But yeah, no. So what did you think about, do you remember what your first like thoughts about John Green were when you first finished
Love.
Fault in Our Stars?
Love
that. Love that.
Yeah, I think that I feel that maybe The Fault in Our Stars was one of the first like truly YA books that I read, as opposed to like kind of the silly middle school stuff. I don't know, which I love silly middle school stuff. Trust, I love that. So I feel like I was like, that's probably why I was like not prepared to be so like emotional about it, because I don't think I was really reading books like that at the time. And yeah, I mean, I just thought John Green's writing, like, it spoke to me. It really got to me. It made me cry,
Yeah.
And also, like, I remember watching John Green and Hank Green, like, at school.
Oh, yeah.
So I just, like, I loved John Green. I mean, I still do. And, like, I feel like reading that book kind of got me more into, like watching their YouTube videos and stuff. And, like, being in the fandom, I guess you could say. Like,
Right.
But, yeah, I feel like I've never really had negative, a negative viewpoint
Of
John Green. I know that, because the thing with The Fault in Our Stars was, like, it got so huge that then, like, everyone wanted to say it was cliche or whatever. And it's like, you guys only think that now because it's so big. The same way that, like, Frozen. It's like, everyone loved it, and then it got so big that then it was like, oh, it's annoying, and we've all heard it before. And it's like, no, you haven't heard it before. You just have been exposed to this movie in 360 degrees all the time,
True.
And so, yeah, I just always loved John Green. Did that answer your question? I don't even know if I answered what you're asking.
No,
oh, okay.
You said something that was like, it really hit for me, which is like, it was the first time you kind of read a book kind of like that, which I think John Green, I remember being so wildly impacted by The Fault in Our Stars, because it was the first book I felt took me seriously as a reader, because you're in that weird age, especially if you're a girl, you're in a weird age at age 14 to 16 where, like, I think you're trying to find a voice in a lot of media, and a lot of times people don't take teenage girls' voices and thoughts and experiences seriously. And then I read The Fault in Our Stars, and I was like, oh, like, this is a guy who, like, is writing and, like, not expecting, like, he's not trying to water anything down for you to, like, fully understand, and he's writing things from his voice and trusting that the audience is going to completely hold on to it with both hands.
Yeah.
And he does it well, and I love it. And
Yeah.
it's also the first time I read a book that, like, oh, we already talked about this kind of, but it was like a book that is both in tone cynical and hopeful.
Yeah.
And so it's the first book that I read that made me take a lot of things to heart, like the inevitable stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's like at the end of that book, I remember being like, okay, so I'm gonna grow up one day. Things are gonna get worse, but things are also gonna get better, and ultimately, I'm gonna die. And I remember never thinking about that before. I was like, wow, like that truly changed a lot of my perspectives on life as we know it, which is a crazy thing to experience at 15. But
I think that John Green does a good job in his books. Like, there's no rule that says books have to do this, but I think he does it and does it well. Of like, you are forced to just like reflect, and not even like in a chore sort of way, like, oh, he's forcing you to, but it's just like, by the nature of what he's writing and how he's writing, it makes you be like, oh, well, let me think about that, or oh, I'm not experiencing what this character is experiencing, but let me stop and think about how they feel in that situation and how I would feel if I was in that situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's like, I mean, that's quite literally, I feel like in English class, especially senior year, we learned like a big point of fiction is empathy. Like, and I think like John Green's books really like invoke empathy, and without it being like, and here's why you should care. You know what I mean? Like,
so true. Yeah, that's really true.
You know, it's like very natural and very authentic.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So I guess that leads me to the question, what did you think about this book?
Okay, so this is my second time reading it. It's your second time, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I remember the first time really liking it, and really, like, I don't know what the right word is, like being immersed in it. Yeah. And same thing this time. I think also after having just read the Six of Crows books, which are like so much all the time, this one was like a breath of fresh air of just like reading about a teenager. Like, I don't want to say like it's easy, but it's just like, it's almost comforting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
Some of the things that I thought like were done really well is like the use of like the run-on sentences, or like the never-ending paragraphs when she's like in her thoughts. And like, I think that's one of those choices that like could have been gimmicky or like goofy, but I think it's done really well, and I feel like it really, and obsessive compulsive thoughts are not something I really have. Like, so I'm not saying like I know this because I know exactly what it's like, but it seems like it's a very like effective way of like showing like how her thoughts are just not stopping. Yes. And they're just going back and forth. And it doesn't I wasn't like, oh, this is a gimmick to show how she's thinking. I'm like, no, this is just how she's thinking, you know?
Yeah. I remember when I read this, I think we were 19. And so very, very young child who had little experience of the world. But when I read it, well, for the viewers, not to make it a therapy session, but like I like definitely suffer from anxiety. And so I have a lot of intrusive thoughts, and I'm not trying to compare my anxiety to OCD because I don't have OCD, but I do have a lot of intrusive thoughts. And so seeing kind of the way that her thought spirals worked and seeing how he wrote that on the page when I was 19, I found the book to be almost triggering.
Like a mirror. Yeah,
it got me really nervous kind of reading it, and like, because you know, you the way that it's written, you read it in your head as like and it was just like I could feel myself getting worked up with her.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's probably just because like I was familiar with the feeling and it's easy for me to go in and out of the thought spiral like that. But yeah, so I think the way he writes it, you can tell is from it's almost like you know that he's somebody who's experienced what
Yeah.
she's feeling, and that's why he can write it so well because like it's so pitch perfect for kind of
Yeah.
what that feeling feels like.
Yeah. To
Yeah.
like along with that. So
Mhm.
I've been listening to Dear Hank and John
Mhm.
for I don't know, a few years now. I'm still not caught up to. I'm sure I have hundreds of episodes left, but I listen to it a lot when I'm commuting to work and stuff. And um, the kind of era that I'm in the podcast is like I just was listening to him talk about I think the Turtles All the Way Down book coming out.
Wow. Yeah.
So I must be in like 2018 era of the
Yeah.
podcast.
Ooh, that's crazy.
But surrounding that, he talks on that podcast all the time about like the microorganisms in your body and how like there's so much bacteria in you that it's like that's not even you, but maybe it is you. And I'm sure that part of that was on his mind because he was probably like doing some research for the book and thinking about what he was writing because this was like around the time that the book was coming out. But after having listened to him like on the podcast, just talk for like years worth of episodes, it's so apparent that like his that Asa is based so much on his personal experience.
Yeah.
Just based on like her liking Dr. Pepper. No, I'm just kidding. He's a I think he's a diet Dr. Pepper stan. But like
Gotcha.
but seriously though, like the OCD and how and the things that she's thinking about and the way that she's thinking about them, I'm like, okay, like it's very authentic to John Green himself, which I think is very interesting. There's something like, okay, so when I really love listening to movie scores, and sometimes I'll watch a movie and then I'll listen to the score over and over and over, like for example Little Women. I love listening to that score, and then like the next time that I watch the movie, the music like stands out like way more than like the first time I watched it because it's like I know the tunes, I know the melodies, and it like really to me it really enhances the viewing of it. And I feel like similarly, like I feel like if you think of like John Green talking on his podcast as like the movie score, like and like the book as the movie, like reading it the second time after having listened to him talk for so much, it like amplified. I feel like I was able to pick up and understand a lot more of like the thoughts and how she's navigating it. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
just like hearing like actually hearing him speak makes Aza's speaking stand out more to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. That's really interesting. I think, speaking on that a little bit, just about John Green and his writing of this book, I think I read somewhere that the reason why he wanted to write this book was because he wanted to almost write a book for his younger self that didn't exist when he was younger, telling himself that it's going to be okay, which I think is like it's everything to me actually. Because like reading this book, the end of this book made me so emotional, and I think it's because I was thinking about my younger self and kind of where I was at with my own mental health journey. And like the road is long, girl. Like I'm not saying it completely went uphill. There's, peaks and valleys, but at the end of the day, there's this really great not to skip right to the end of the book, but there's this really, really good part in the end of the book where it's like her friend Daisy. Hang on, I gotta find it. I wrote a note. I need to make sure
Okay.
I'm writing or talking about the right thing. Okay. Yeah, so there's an incredible line towards the end of the book where, at the beginning of the book, her friend Daisy, Aza's friend Daisy, is explaining like the White River to Aza and
Mhm.
how Indianapolis came to be, which is like they found a river on a map and they're like, oh cool, we're gonna have this be the big city, we're gonna make it be the capital because we can have a port here and we can have ships come in for
Mhm.
import, etc. But then they realized when they got there that the river was like 6 inches deep and there's no way a ship can come down
Yeah.
the river. Um, and so for a while it became like the longest city, or it's not the longest city, the biggest city on a non-navigable waterway or whatever.
Right.
And then so towards the end, this comes back around. It's like Chekhov's White River. And so like Aza compares herself to the White River and says that she's non-navigable. And there's like
Uh-huh.
this line that stuck out to me so much because I found it so comforting. But Daisy tells her that that's not the point of the story. The point is that they built the city anyway. And
Yeah.
like you work with what
I
you
just got
have.
chills.
I know, you work with what you have. It hit me so hard. It's like you come into this world, people with mental illnesses, I feel like it can really, this explains it for everybody, but like it can really hit hard for people with mental illnesses because I personally felt like I came into this world with a lot, like with no agency, like kind of what
Mhm.
Ace was talking about, where like
Yeah.
I feel controlled by a lot of my thoughts and a lot of my anxieties. And then to think that like, yes, this is your situation, but you build on it anyway. Like you grow anyway.
Right.
You work with what you have anyway because in the grand scheme of things, you can become something important.
Yeah.
And so I just love that. I feel like it's like such a great thing to be told if you're kind of in, like if you're stuck in the spiral of your mind like
Yeah.
Aza is, to like to know that like you need to like you're going to go on anyway. You need to build anyway.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
great and
I
really
like that a
helpful.
lot.
Yeah, it's just kind of, that's why I think I appreciate, I don't know if I've said this yet, but this is my favorite John Green book. And it
Oh
was
yeah.
when I read it at 19. And I think the reason why I like it so much is because of how hopeful I feel at the end. Even though
Mhm.
the story's not finished, like as far as Aza's, like John
Mhm.
Green doesn't put a nice bow on Aza's mental health and he's not like, and from then on she was better, but it's just like she has this moment where she knows that life will go on because she as a singular person goes on,
Yeah.
and like that is kind of what you need to take away from the book as a whole, is like, yes, it's bad now and it will be bad in the future probably, but like one thing you can be certain of is that you will go on.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, it's just I love a hopeful kind of take on what feels like you're in the pits.
Yeah.
You're just like, okay, well, it's not going to be for forever. And if it is for
Mhm.
forever, look at all the great stuff that can still happen,
Yeah, you
you
can
know?
build a city anyways. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
My sort of like favorite part about hope in the book that really stuck out to me was when someone is talking about how the spiral keeps tightening the further down you go.
Mhm.
But they also say that it keeps widening the further up you go, the further
Yeah.
like out of it you go. And I think that that stood out to me because Aza's always talking about like kind of drowning in the spiral, and I feel like at first she only sees it as like a one way journey. Like she
Yeah.
can only go down and down and down, and it can only tighten and tighten and tighten, and like almost like, and this might just be me reading too far between the lines, and maybe this isn't the intended thought, but like it almost feels like she either thinks the spiral either needs to stop, like there's only two options. She can stop the spiral or she'll keep tightening down. But I think
Mhm.
she doesn't at first see that the spiral can still be there, but she can like
Yeah.
come out of it and it will widen and it won't be like affecting her.
Yeah.
But it can still be there. Kind of like, I'm just realizing this is kind of like you saying like the river's non-navigable, but they built it anyway. And
Yep.
it's like she might have this spiral around her,
Mm-hmm.
but she can still like live and move forward anyway. Like she might
100%.
not be able to get rid of the spiral, but she can work on like finding ways to widen it so it's not like, you know,
Yeah.
tightening all the time.
Yeah, you know what this reminds me of, which is just kind of highlighting how good John Green is at writing. Or like he's really good at metaphors or
Uh-huh.
overarching kind of metaphors of in the
Yeah.
story. But I don't know if you've noticed this, but I thought the sky was a really great metaphor that he continuously brought up in the book. And so it like struck me because I'm somebody who is constantly taking photos of the sky through tree branches. Don't know why,
Oh,
just love
yeah.
that. And so there was a moment where Aza's looking through her late father's phone, and she sees a bunch of photos of the sky through tree branches, and she makes a note, and she's like, "That's I don't know why he would do that. I don't know what the beauty he finds in all these photos. Whatever, you know."
Yeah.
And so I like I put a little like note in that at first because I was
Uh-huh.
like, okay, what, like that's interesting. And then let me try again. When we meet Davis, we find that he's a lover of astronomy. And so the very first blog post that Aza reads of Davis, which is on his like anonymous blog, which is basically just like her finding her dad's phone and looking through it. It's like basically the same exact thing as finding, you know, someone's anonymous blog online.
Oh, yeah.
But so the very first post is Davis talking about the sky from his house, and it's like an open, clear sky, and how he finds comfort in the sky. And he says something like, the sky is everything, and even though his life is in shambles, he's taking comfort in the fact that he can lay down and look at an open sky. And then, if we want to keep on going into it, on their
Yeah.
first date, they view a meteor shower, right? And so it's too cloudy to see, though. And so Davis makes her go outside anyway. And Aza is basically uninterested in it. She basically says something like, I'm not really here for the meteors. And Davis says, like, maybe we'll find a break in the clouds. And then there's this really lovely exchange between them where she says, it's still happening anyway. We just can't see it.
Yes.
But what would it... Yeah.
I noted that too.
Yeah, and she's like, what would it look like if we could see it? And so Aza, somebody who's not interested in looking at the sky, is kind of indirectly talking to Davis about, I'm taking it as like her future, the bigger picture of it all, you know? And so it's like the first point where I think Aza asked for help indirectly. She wants to see what her life could be like outside the spiral in a way. Do you know what I mean? So like, let's break it up into
yeah.
3 pieces now. I know this is a really long explanation, but I
I
want to
like this.
hint on it. Cool, thank you. But yeah, so we have Aza, who does not understand the sky's beauty, has little interest in it. Ultimately, she's so wrapped up in her own world that she has very little perspective outside of herself and her thought spirals. And then we have Aza's dad, who she idolizes, but who we know through her mom kind of had the same mental struggles almost as Aza, maybe not as extreme. But he has this appreciation and perspective of the sky, but it's always going to be through the tree branches, right? And so he sees the bigger picture, but there's going to be something in the way, kind of. And then we have Davis, who I think is like the grand, like Aza's teacher almost in this book, and he is somebody who is always going to look at the clear sky, the bigger picture. He's obsessed with looking at the clear night or whatever, you know? And so at the very end of the story, Aza takes Davis outside and she sits down on the grass and she says, well, this is what the sky looks like from my house. And they're looking at a sky through trees. And so, but she still asks him anyway. She says, like, what are we looking at? And I think that, in a way, shows kind of where we leave her as a character. And so she knows she has a lot of work to do, but she finally makes that choice to sit down and look at the sky, which is ultimately her deciding to see the bigger picture of things.
Okay, that was incredible. Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
Wow.
I loved it. Because I noted
Yeah.
it as soon as like they were on their first date, and I was like, this is so like smart for John Green
Yeah.
to make that overall metaphor of like life being okay, like we have to, just like you have to look up, you have to see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And that is so you're that English degree is working because seriously, like
you.
I had not picked up on that, but you explaining that, it seems so clear now.
Okay, good. I'm
Like
glad.
no, like I'm so glad you told me that. Cuz that is so cool. And
Yeah.
oops, sorry, my cord was really loud. But wow. That is so interesting, especially like that not only is it just about like Aza not not knowing what she's looking at in the sky, and then like Davis having the clear sky, but also her dad being a part of that, and like
Yeah.
his sky pictures always having the tree branches in them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. I
That's
really loved it.
to put it in silly terms, that's big brain.
Thank you. You're making me feel so good right now,
Oh
honestly.
my gosh,
I was
no.
I was completely expecting to come on here and be like, "Ooh, I thought I had like 5 pages of notes about this." And you're going to be like, "Yeah, we know."
No, no. Oh my gosh,
Okay,
no. That
good.
was like that was
That was my English degree
the
coming out.
yeah, I was going to say like the annotating
Oh yeah.
went strong.
Guys, just in
Um
case if you want to see, by the way, this is my annotations. I was going
Mine,
crazy.
yeah, mine I just wrote in my journal, but
Yeah.
okay, I have a couple little text to text connections
Yes,
that I want
please.
to talk about.
Please.
And every time that I do this, I always think about in 3rd grade when we learned text to self,
Yep.
text to world, and text to text.
Yep,
Um,
exactly.
So one of the times was when Davis comes over to Aza's house for the first time. Well, Aza's trying to just leave. But
Yeah.
then her mom's like, bring the boy inside.
Yeah.
And she kind of is like, my daughter's not just some girl you can have, like, you need to respect her, whatever. Just setting some parental boundaries.
Right.
And Davis just, like, bursts into tears. And then like and Aza's mom is saying like, I know you can like have whatever you want. And then later Aza and Davis are talking about it, and Aza's like, I'm so sorry, like my mom, and he's like, like she's wrong, like I can't have anything I want. And she's like, well, what can't you have? And he's like, well, a mom for starters. And the way I read this scene is like he's crying because not just because he misses his mom and like wishes that she was there, but because I think like having the parental like rules, like having a parent tell him what to do, I think is what he wanted, because he didn't have his mom, and his dad was kind of like not really like a good parent. And it made me think of like in The Outsiders, the one I don't remember the character's name, but there's the one I remember so vividly in 8th grade when I read this. There was one character who said he wished someone would tell him no. I don't remember what character it was, but as like a 13-year-old reading that book, I was like, what? Because there's some guy in that book that his parents basically let him do whatever he wants. And as a 13-year-old, I'm like, why wouldn't he want that? Because like I don't want to say my parents were super strict. I love you, mom and dad, if you're listening to this. But I definitely had rules. Like, I definitely had rules, and I felt like I had more rules than a lot of other people my age. And so I was like, oh, that's the life, to not have your parents, like, telling you what to do.
Yeah.
But that teen boy said, like, he wished he would have had someone to tell him no. And I think what that really means is, like, he wished he had a parent who was there to help guide him with what was right and what was wrong.
100%.
And so to me, like, when Davis cries during that part when Aza's mom is like, you need to, she's not just some girl and la la la. I think definitely part of it is just like he misses his mom, but I think it's like having a parent like parent him was like he needed that inside,
Yes.
And
I
agree.
agree.
I just really love that part.
Yeah, there's a lot to say about Davis, and I think the way that his family life has impacted him. I think a lot, like his very first physical description we get to read is, I think Aza describes him as his features being too big for him. Like he had, like, they'd grown up, but his face was like still a kid,
Yeah.
something like that. And so I thought that was such a smart line because it describes, his physical description and then also the character as a whole as soon as we meet him, which is,
Yeah.
he's somebody who matured too early. He's been almost robbed of his youth because of
Yeah.
his family and like the death of his mom. And then he had to become a father figure of sorts to his little brother,
Right.
and which is so interesting. And then also, when they finally decide to part ways, Aza and Davis, he says something along the lines of, I need to be loved up close. And I think that has so much to do with just his relationship with his father and feeling like
Yeah.
that disconnect from his dad, feeling like
True.
his dad was never there for him in his life. And you kind of see how all the little battles that he's going through and how
Yeah.
he's been so patient with Aza this whole entire book, so like understanding and willing to wait, but the one thing that he needs is
Yeah.
he needs to feel loved or needs to feel wanted in a situation because he never
Right.
got that. I just feel like I liked seeing that that's where we left him. I mean, we also
Yeah.
get to hear about him and his brother moving away, but I like that we got that piece of him because it showed he had so much he was also working through himself.
Yeah.
And like his story's also not finished, just like Aza's,
Yeah. And I think not to like bring up The Fault in Our Stars again, because that's
Sure.
not what the book
No,
we're
but
on.
let's
like,
do it.
like Augustus Waters always says, I feel like he had really good, like, these really beautiful lines.
Yeah.
And I, like, when I read that in high school, I was like, or like, watched the movie, I'm like, no boy actually talks like that. But the thing is, like, my boyfriend kind of does.
Yes. Okay, I have so much
And-
to say about this.
And I'm like, and I'll always like kind of tease him, which I don't know if he's can hear me right now. But like sometimes he'll say these like really beautiful one lines, like very lovey, very romantic, and which is so sweet and I love it. But sometimes I'll be like, I love you, my Augustus Waters. Like I'll call him like my Augustus Waters because I feel like that's like it was just such a like not like a stereotype but kind of a trope, I don't know.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's like, and so I feel like people calling Davis like this manic pixie dream girl for Aza, like I feel like they're like, and I don't know because I didn't write these reviews because I don't agree with that, but maybe
Yeah.
they're like, what boy like runs a blog and writes poetry on a secret blog? And I'm like,
plenty of
there
people
are
do.
boys that do that.
Yeah, so I have so much to say about this because that was one of my biggest annoyances, I would say, when we were in the peak of John Green books being consumed by people our age, I felt like I heard so often, like, the characters are pretentious, and therefore John Green writes unrealistic, unrelatable characters. And I felt like it was always such a... like, it always was such an insult on what John Green was attempting to do. Because it's just, I feel like there's a few things it's doing which I don't like. First of all, like you were saying, people were saying, hey, no one speaks like this, so therefore the characters are unrealistic, whatever. However, I mean, I know people exist like this because I've met people who exist like this.
Yeah.
And at least at the very, very, very least, when I was younger, I tried to speak like this. If you saw my ACT scores, you know that I did not pull it off well.
Stop, what?
I was not intelligent enough to come up with half of these things.
Oh my god.
But like I was, they do exist, and that's also coming from somebody who lived in the Midwest, where it's like I didn't go to like an art school. I didn't go to these fancy schools
Right.
where like my parents were professors or whatever. Like it's just like normal teenagers who like spoke like this or
Yeah.
had these grand thoughts like this. But I also think that I think a lot of people, this also gets into one of my pet peeves. I don't like it when people can't really suspend their disbelief for the greater purpose of
Yeah.
the story. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you think that these characters are unrealistic, that does not mean that it's bad writing. You know, it's a badly written book. It's not a badly written book.
It's fiction.
It's, yeah, exactly.
Imagine that.
Imagine that. But I think it's really insulting to John Green because even if these characters are speaking in these, like, grand sweeping statements and metaphors or, like, making references to Shakespeare, like, they're still these, like, they're very, very curious. They're very insecure. But they're also asking, you know, that, like, that grand question, what is my purpose in the world? And I think that's the one question that probably unites every single person, especially teenagers.
Especially as a teenager, yeah.
Yeah, and so even if you aren't using the words that these characters are using, even if you're not speaking like these characters, you're ultimately you're asking the same questions.
Right.
And so ultimately,
that's so true.
That's going to make them relatable.
Yeah.
They're relatable, realistic characters because they're still asking the same questions that every single character asks, which is really, really watering things down, but, like, truly, I feel like that's the greater point. And, like, even if John Green is, like, a 35-year-old man writing like a 35-year-old man, like, as he would speak, I think he's definitely a person who just wants to educate the people who cross his path. And so even if you can't relate to the way the characters are speaking, I think you can definitely learn something from the way they talk.
And you know what? I actually made a note in my little notes to talk about that. I think that he did a very good job of writing their texting. Like,
oh, yeah.
There are so many times where, because I feel like texting is like, it's like at this point, that is a big part of how we communicate, especially teenagers, especially people even our age. And so, like, at some point, like, yeah, the books are gonna have texting in it because that is how conversations are happening. But there are so many books that I read that it's so cringy to read the texting. Like, it's so, I'm just like, no, like, nobody texts like this, you know? But I felt like the texting in this book was very natural. It was very, like, believable. Yeah. And the only parts of it that were cringy were just cringy because it's teenagers texting, and that's how we were all teenagers once. Like, we texted like that, you know? Like, saying, like, hi, you know, like, that's so... But it's real. I mean, when you have a crush on a boy or whatever, like, you do those dorky kind of, like, awkward texts, you know? At least I did. Yeah. So.
Yeah. No, if I ever had to look through what I was saying to people at age 16. No. I look back on texts I sent a year ago and I'm like, who is that? Literally, girl, get up.
The other text to text that I had was, after their big fight in the car, Aza and Daisy. Yeah. They're mad at each other for different things, and then they get in the car wreck, and then I can't remember if they're texting each other or maybe it's the first time that they're seeing each other after the hospital. Whatever it is, they're apologizing to each other. But it's like, it must have been texting in the hospital or something.
Okay, yeah.
And because I remember this happening, it seemed like kind of like immediate. And the thing I wrote down was, let me find it in my little notes here. Okay, so page 226, if anyone cares to look it up. I said, don't let the sun go down on this anger.
Laura, me, literally me too. Me
you
too.
Did?
Literally, I was like, this is so marmy.
It's so marmy. Like, okay, so for reference, that's from Little Women, which that specific line is from the movie, the 2019 movie. I actually haven't finished reading Little Women, but it's on my to-do list. But it's like, honestly, I think both of them were justified in some of the things they were angry about, and I think that they also needed to see from each other's perspective and stuff.
Yep. 100%.
But as soon as they realized how dire this situation was, it seems like Aza could have died from this car wreck, maybe. It's like they knew that no problem they had between each other was more extreme than needing to, like, than the need to just know that they loved for each other and cared for each other. And you know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
like they knew immediately, like, oh my gosh, what if something really tragic had just happened in that car wreck and we had let the sun go down on that anger?
Yeah.
There, someone could have not made it out of that car wreck, and the last thing that would have happened was a fight. And like in that moment, they were like, we need to apologize, we need to be friends, we
Yeah.
need to, you know
100%. That was
yeah.
something that I was thinking the whole time I was reading this because, well, first of all, that's one of my very favorite quotes I've ever heard in a piece of media ever.
Yeah. Yeah, same.
But more so, the part right before Marmee says that, or maybe it's after, but in that same conversation, Joe says something to Marmee like, well, not you, you're never angry. And Marmee's like, I'm angry nearly every day of my life.
Yes.
It's so impactful to me. I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. But that's something I was thinking a lot throughout this book because, it's like Aza has almost, so much hate for herself. Kind of. Like there's a point in this book where Daisy asks her if she hates herself, and she's like, I don't think I know myself enough to hate myself, which is another
Yeah.
really tragic thing in and of itself. But
Yeah.
I like to think about that in terms of just needing, like we've said this a whole bunch, but needing to get your head out of the spiral.
Yeah.
It's something that I myself have to think about a lot in my day-to-day life, where it's like you can see people from their own individualized maybe I didn't say that right, but like you can see people from the way that they're presenting themselves to the world. Like I think Daisy and Davis are great examples of this, where it's like from the outside you're like, you can never understand, and then it's like, well, no, I deal with this too, but in this and this
Yeah.
way. And it's just
Yeah.
like like to me it's like that's a really like clarifying moment for people who struggle with being so inside of their own head. So it's like I love that. I kept going back to that Marmee quote because I was like, this is so like she just needs to see that like other people are also dealing with their own
Yeah.
individual battles. But like also to go
Yeah.
off on that, one of my favorite quotes in this book, which hit me the hardest at age 25 more than it did at age 19, and
Oh, yeah.
it happened in the movie, and that's why it stuck out to me.
Oh, yeah.
But Daisy, it's when they're fighting in the car, and Daisy says,
I've been waiting for this because you told me that
Yes.
there was a quote you really liked.
it really impacted me. But so she says, you're so pathologically uncurious you don't even know what you don't know. And like that, I feel like I've never felt more attacked in my whole entire life than reading that. And I was like, because
my
it
gosh.
really clarified something for me, because so I'm somebody who finds myself in situations where I feel constantly out of the loop, if that makes sense. And so it's like I'll be in a conversation and I'll reach a point where if I'm in a conversation with 3 people, myself included, and 2 people know something, I have to nod along because I'm like, did people just forget to fill me in? Like, what happened? And it's almost like I always want to get angry about it. And then I'm like, I feel like it's just because I don't ask questions very often, because how wrapped up I am in my own train of thought. I'm always, this is really how it works, is it's like I'm almost scared to learn about the bad or exciting things in people's lives because it always comes back to me in some way. If this is turning into a therapy session, let me tell you.
We're getting real on the
Let's get real quick. I don't think I've actually ever really explained this thoroughly to people, so I'm hoping I'm doing it justice. It's making me sound selfish, but that's kind of the point of this book. Like, sometimes mental illness means you're selfish.
Yeah.
We're not perfect. I'm working on it. But anyway, so it's like, usually if I talk to people about things that are going bad in their lives, I find that I immediately think, how would I handle that? And then my answer is always, I couldn't, because of my anxiety. And then I spiral. And I'll be like thinking, wow, I'm so mature. Like, how am I supposed to be an adult if I can't even deal with these hard things in life? And and then I'm thinking about how much I let anxiety rule my life. And hearing this from like a best friend in the book, like knowing that like your best friend is like, you don't know things about me because you don't ask, and I know everything about you because I care so much about you. And I think it's
Yeah.
just, again, it's so important. It really like made me empathize so much with Daisy because I needed to see her perspective from like what her perspective was like being friends with Aza,
Yeah.
because I related to Aza so hard. And then Daisy feeling upset with her, I was like, why would you ever write about your friend in a fanfic? And then hearing that, you're just like, wow. Like
Yeah.
that is so like I understand her, and I
Mhm.
understand that she is also going through her own stuff, and like how isolating it must be to be friends with somebody who cannot get outside their brain. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah, love to get really into that. But no, but more so, what did you think about their fight? I feel like I've seen a lot of people online say things about how they don't know how Aza was able to forgive Daisy for writing about. I know, and
Oh.
I think that's very. I think that's
Oh.
very so. And like, I'm just like, how are you? Okay.
Because okay. So
this,
wait. Were you gonna
this,
say something?
I was gonna say this goes back to our conversation earlier about having empathy in books for
Yeah.
characters and for situations. And I'm not saying if I was in Aza's situation and found out my friend was doing this to me, I would be so up and ready to forgive her. But I
Right.
think Daisy as a whole, her character and the purpose that she serves for Aza as a friend, shows like Aza could not live a day without her.
Yeah.
And
So I do think it's a pretty mean thing.
yeah.
It is mean, and
Yeah.
I like if I found out that you or someone of my other friends was like writing about me in that way, like I would be very very hurt. But I think that they were both hurting each other,
Yeah, 100%.
and I think that when they both recognized that
Yeah.
and they were like, you know what, you're right. I'm sorry. I understand you, and let's move forward. And I feel like not to like say that it's fine that what Daisy was doing was fine, but she did say she created the character when she was like 11.
Yeah.
And 11-year-olds don't she didn't probably have the foresight to see that it was going to become this big huge thing.
Yeah.
And it was a mean thing to do when she was 11, but I think that I don't know. I think like the character took on this exaggerated persona based on Aza, and it I don't know. I think I could forgive her,
Yeah, me too.
because I'm just like I don't know. I care more about my friend. Like, I care too much about my friends to let something, like, destroy our friendship if I'm able to see their perspective. I feel like Daisy had a legitimate perspective and a legitimate reason.
Yeah.
Even though that doesn't make it okay, and that doesn't make it nice.
Yeah,
But
100%.
Daisy realized, you know what? This is a kind of a bad thing to do.
Yeah.
And I am sorry, and let me kill off the character for you, or whatever. Like, you know, like she was ready to just be like, you know what? Let me fix this situation.
Yeah.
Now, the other side of that is she wasn't ready to fix it until Aza knew about it. So
Yeah.
that is kind of, but the thing is, Aza didn't know about it because she never read her best friend's, like, so I'm like, in a way,
Yeah.
I kind of feel Aza's at fault too, in a
Yeah,
way.
100%. Yeah.
Like, so I just think it's a situation where they were both in the wrong for certain things, and so if Aza's gonna feel that she deserves to be forgiven, then she needs to forgive as well. I feel like it was a
Yeah.
two-way street, and so that's surprising to me that people were saying
That
that
don't
they couldn't
understand.
believe that
Yeah.
she would forgive Daisy. And it's like, think of everything else that Daisy has done for her.
Yeah.
And this one thing, even though, yeah, it was over many years, but it's like, if Daisy was actually like a bad person and didn't like her, she wouldn't have been by her side all those times. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
I think it not I don't want to sound like I'm questioning the people's intelligence who have that opinion, but it feels like to me you might have missed a grander point of the story,
Yeah.
which is that the whole purpose of their fight is that they both had to get checked in their friendship, as far as what they were doing that was selfish. And so,
Yeah.
and like you were saying, some things were like a lot of it is outside of Asa's control because she feels so kind of trapped inside of her mind. And then, some things Daisy, I think, could have handled better, but ultimately, at the end of the day, their relationship it had to grow. It had
Yeah.
reached a point where they couldn't ignore the main factors anymore that were hindering their friendship
Yeah.
from growing beyond what they were. Like Asa, she was limiting herself so much to that friendship and she didn't even know it.
Yeah.
And so I just think in the grand scheme of things, it made them better. And
Yeah.
that's why it
Definitely.
was important for them to have the fight and then understand their love for each other past that.
Yeah.
I think it was a very mature growth in their friendship. It showed that they were kind of reaching, I mean, a typical coming of age. They were reaching a
Yeah.
new age. And
Right.
so they had to work out any friendship issues that they
Yeah.
had that they were ignoring. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think like so I feel like there's different like there's parts of Daisy that I relate more to and there's parts of Asa that I relate more to.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And something that like stuck out to me as like to get personal here on my end
Yeah,
is
go
like
off. I've been doing too much.
like Daisy's like, you never read my stories, and Aza's like, well, you never asked, and um and Daisy's like, but I shouldn't have to ask. Like, you're my best friend, I shouldn't have to ask you to like support my work or whatever. And that is something that like I felt checked on. Like I've gotten a lot better since I've had my sweet little boyfriend, because we talk about things like ways that we can be better friends to each other, be there for each other more. And something that I do that's more on the Daisy end is I talk and talk and talk and talk, and I love to talk and I can talk about myself all day. And not to like put Sage and I's relationship out there for the whole world, but he's laughing over there. Like, there have been times when he's told me like, you don't that I don't always do a good job of like asking about like his like what's going on, like, oh, what did you do today and whatever, because I'm the type of person that I don't have to have someone ask me. I'm just gonna tell, like, I'll just talk, because I don't know, I just talk a lot. And so when Daisy's saying like, but I shouldn't have to like ask you to be interested in my life, I feel like that was like her saying that to me, like, people that are close to me shouldn't have to ask me to be interested in their life. Do you know what I'm saying? Which I've gotten like a lot better. I think so. Sage is nodding his head.
Yeah.
Saying yes. I've gotten a lot better at that, but yeah, it's just like their fight is just like it's so realistic, because I feel like both of the things they're doing that are kind of wrong or need corrected are like truly what real people do in real life.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we can't. This is another pet peeve I have, but I feel like a lot of times maybe this has always existed, or maybe it's just really coming to a forefront in modern day media. But we expect maybe a little too much perfection out of our characters.
Yeah.
And it's like that meme going around where people are like, we want what is it, like, complicated female characters, and they're like, you can't even handle her, and it's like a photo of whoever. So but it's true. I think a lot of people expect an almost flawless character, or a character with flaws that are pretty indigestible. And that's just not where the fun, interesting, complicated, challenging
Yeah.
stories exist, you know?
Mhm.
You need to have characters that, a lot of times when they have these relatable flaws, they're hard to root for sometimes, or they're hard
Mhm.
to forgive. But ultimately, that's where it becomes relatable and
Yeah.
an important piece of media to,
Right.
like,
I was going to say like that's where it becomes important. Like that's where it
mm-hmm,
becomes like the author is doing something, he's saying something. It's not just like,
exactly.
"Oh, that was easily forgivable, so of course she's going to forgive." It's, "Hey, here's this character in a really hard situation and despite that they chose to forgive." You
True.
know?
Like, and ultimately, like, I mean, not to. This is the most basic thing in the world to say, but good media is supposed to challenge you. It's like
Yeah,
you're supposed to
no,
learn something
really
from it.
though. Really
And
though.
so, that's why I'm like, I wish more people walked into their media with an empathetic mind or
Yeah.
heart.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Yeah.
Um something I'm just looking at my notes.
Yeah.
Something that I would have loved more of. I understand we can't have everything in the book, but I was really interested in Noah, Davis's little
Oh,
brother,
sure, yeah.
and like I just was interested in more of his story. Like I wish we could have learned a little
Yeah.
bit more about him. Um but I noticed that like Asa kind of was a little bit maternal for him at some
Yes.
points.
Yes.
And I just really love like it makes a lot of sense like Asa has a mom and she kind of can probably model that behavior. Whereas like Noah and Davis don't have a mom, and even though Noah had a dad for a while, but he wasn't that great, and he has his older brother, but like he was like sometimes would confide in Asa or like ask her questions like, "Do you really think they're gonna find him?" And Asa just like kind of was like, "Yeah, like it's gonna be okay," like And I
Right.
just really liked those moments. And one thing that was really crazy was the time that she is at their house, and I think she like kissed Davis, and then she's freaking out about his like the microbiome from his mouth or
Yeah.
whatever
Mm-hmm.
being in hers. And so she like goes in their bathroom and like drinks sanitizer, which is hand sanitizer, which is
Yeah. Really hard to
like
read.
it's a
Yeah.
scary thing to read because it's like,
Yeah.
whoa,
Yeah. Like,
she's
that's how.
really going through it.
Yeah.
And then she walks out after this like horrifying thing, and she just like basically harmed herself. And then there's little Noah out there, and he's like, "Hey Asa," and then like she just kind of goes into like mom mode for him, like, or whatever, like
100%,
she's
yeah.
there for him, like she can't she can't find the way sometimes to extend like love and self-care to herself, but she's
Yes.
obviously capable of it because she's doing like immediately she's like doing what she can to comfort this little brother after just like doing something so harmful to herself. I just thought that was a very interesting scene to read because it's like immediate, like
Yes.
the switch.
That's such a good thing to bring up. I feel like it
Yeah.
also goes to show how much of Aza's situation isn't completely black and white. I feel like, I mean, going back to kind of that line where Daisy accuses her of being pathologically uncurious, you can maybe extend that to being uncaring or whatever. And it's like it's maybe for so much of her life, Aza finds trouble in extending I can't talk, specific type of love to people, whatever. If it means like, reading someone's fanfic without asking, or without them asking, or asking them questions about their day, whatever.
Right.
But she has so many moments too of like pure compassion and empathy and understanding, and it's just like
Yeah.
it's almost like she also doesn't realize how much she exists outside of her own kind of headspace and thought spiral, and it's also showing how much of a person she really is. Her whole entire almost I can't think of the word for it, but argument maybe is the right word, that she's trying to make about her mental illness in this book is like she feels like she's not a person. She doesn't
Yeah.
exist outside of the thoughts that she has.
Mm-hmm.
But like then you see moments like that and it really clarifies to the reader
Yeah.
that she does exist 100% outside of her
Right.
bad moments, and
Yeah.
she's actually a very lovely, warm, caring, compelling character in person.
Right.
So yeah, it's really great writing. That's
Yeah.
really lovely on John Green's part.
And also, like, there are times in the book where, like, Michael and Daisy are talking and she is just thinking about something completely different. But
Oh
there
yeah.
are times that I noticed where a character, either one or two characters, are talking to her, and she is having, like, responses in her mind. She just doesn't say anything
Yeah.
out loud. And I was just like, this is so interesting because she actually is a lot of times very present. She's
Yes.
just not saying anything. But, like, she's thinking about what the characters are saying. She's having response like things. They're just thoughts in her head, but she's not always saying them.
Yeah.
Like, I think there was one where she's with Davis and he says something probably about the sky and she's thinking about this and that and this and that. And then he's like, you don't say much. You don't really talk much. And she's
Oh
like,
yeah.
But, like, she just had this whole basically monologue in her
Yes.
head.
So true.
She is present in the sense that, like, she's tuned into what's happening. She's tuned into the moment, but she just isn't, like, verbalizing anything.
That is so
And
real.
yeah, that's, like, I found that really interesting. I don't think I noticed that as much the first time I read it. I think I just was, like, always thinking, like, oh, she's just in her head thinking. But it's like sometimes she's in the moment thinking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah, I actually barely even picked up on that. I mean, I underlined parts where she's talking about all the things that she would say if she wasn't trapped in her thought spiral, which I always thought was really interesting. But yeah, I mean, as somebody who also gets labeled as the quiet girl my whole entire life, no matter how much I feel like I'm contributing, I'm always labeled that for some reason.
Yeah.
My mind is on fire, literally always going at 1,000 miles per hour, and so I think that's so real. But did you want to talk about the movie at all? I know that you talked about.
Oh, yeah.
Did you have any other thoughts before we moved on? I didn't want to also cut you off if you had more to say.
Nah, not really.
Okay, it's like
Okay, so I watched the movie last night with Sage, and right away I was like, we were really into it. That it seemed like it was way more like of an art movie than I, like, expected it to be.
Yeah,
Like,
I agree.
Like, just with the cool, like, the microorganisms or whatever it was, and like going back and forth between her and that, and like there would be, like, text on the screen and stuff. So I just, like, as an overall thing, I really liked the format of the movie, if that makes sense.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think it did a good job of, like, showing how her thoughts would, like, kind of attack her while she was, like, in conversations with other people.
Ooh, okay, yeah.
I have to say the characters were not quite what I imagined.
Okay.
The only one that I felt like was the most real to how I, like, imagined it was Daisy.
Yeah, I think I agree too.
I was actually surprised in the movie. I didn't get the sense in the book that Aza was, like, hiding herself from her mom, and that she seemed kind of standoffish to her mom in the movie. Like, just the way that she was like, I'm going to Davis's, bye. I didn't, like, I don't know if that was how it was intended to be read in the book, but I just read it as, like, I thought she really, like, loved her mom and, like, enjoyed her presence in her life, but just didn't know how to open up about some things.
Yeah.
But in the movie, I felt like she almost, I don't want to say she didn't like her mom, but she would just seem very much, like, cold shoulder to her mom a lot.
Yeah.
Which was, like, not how I read their relationship in the book. But,
Sure. I wonder if the reason why, because so I watched the movie in April, and I hadn't read the book since 2018, and so it's
Oh, right.
so it was really like mostly I was using the movie, and it caught me up on a lot of things I had forgotten about.
Uh-huh.
But then reading the book, well, first of all, I feel like it's actually it's a pretty great adaptation as far as like text
Yeah,
to screen. I think they really
definitely.
stayed super true to so much of the story. And I agree with you about the characters too. I feel like specifically Davis is very different from what I imagined him
Yes.
as. And now
Yeah.
rereading this book too, I'm like, he's so much more like nerdy and like I think
Yeah.
I wanted more time with Davis maybe in the
Mm-hmm.
movie to get him to be more fleshed out than he kind of was, but that's whatever. I didn't take notes on that, so
Yeah.
I can't really talk about it too much.
Yeah.
But I wonder if her relationship with her mom in the movie was like maybe trying to show the way that Asa was slowly kind of isolating herself from all the relationships that she
Yeah.
had in her life,
That
and
could make
then
sense.
ultimately building up to that huge the conflict and
Mm-hmm.
the climax of the book, which is I believe the car
Yeah.
accident,
Yeah.
and then being in the hospital and having to rebuild from there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think one thing that I really like though about the movie, which kind of goes in part with her relationship with her mom, is because it's a movie, you can't be so much inside of the character's head as you are
Yeah.
as the book, and so it placed a lot of importance, I think, on um the characters and the relationships in Asa's life, which I
Yeah.
really liked. I think it highlighted how important ultimately your relationships are and how influential they are
Yeah.
for somebody who like Asa, like just sometimes she needs help grounding herself.
Yeah.
And so like one thing that I was thinking about, this is my favorite scene I think in the movie. But when she's in the hospital room with her mom and her mom's singing that song, "We're here because we're here because we're here because we're here," it's gonna make me
Mm-hmm.
cry actually just thinking about
Oh
it. I love it. I love it. I think
no.
it's
Yeah.
such a small moment where it's like, like her mom cares for her so much, and it's like that
Mm-hmm.
my word recall today is so bad, but what's it called when you love
Oh yeah.
unconditional
Yeah.
love. How much unconditional love you can
Yeah.
have you have for a child, and it's I like if it wasn't for her mom in that moment, like I don't think there would have been anybody who'd bring Asa back to
Yeah.
herself. And
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. But also it's like too, there's little things too, like I think I like the ending of the movie a lot because
Mm-hmm.
there's that section in the book where like Ace talking about her future and how she has her whole life ahead of her and how scary it is, but ultimately like her life's going to go on because she's going to go on.
Yeah.
But in the book, it's like her friend Daisy is telling her that, and
Mm-hmm.
I
Wait,
think
in the book or in the movie?
in the movie. Sorry, did I say the book?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
meant the
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah. Okay.
My bad.
That's okay. I wanted to make
Yeah,
sure I was
no,
remembering right.
I'm glad you clarified that because I would have been annoyed if I said that wrong. Um, but yeah, as much as I like her coming to terms with it herself in the book, I
Mm-hmm.
think it's more impactful almost in a way for Daisy to tell her that in the
Yeah, I
movie.
really liked it like that too.
Yeah, because Asa spends her whole book, the whole book and the whole movie almost thinking that she's on her own in everything because
Yeah.
she's so isolated. And so
Yeah.
to at the end have her best friend kind of hold her hand and tell her that everything's going to be okay, it almost drives home the point that if you're mentally in the woods, do you know what I mean? You can't just cling
Uh-huh.
onto yourself. You need the people around you to help you
Right.
get through it. And so,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I definitely think like I really love that the ending is like about the friendship. Like I love Davis and I loved like the little cute little Asa and Davis sort of fling,
Yeah, I like
but
that too.
the way that the ending is like Asa's like, okay, Davis told me he needed me to love him up close, and I can't do that for him right now, but I can do that for my best friend.
Yeah.
Like I can do that for my friends. I can do that for my mom. I can do that for the people that I have right here. And I think really it's about, yeah, you're totally right. Like Asa has been feeling like she's just alone in this, and it's like Daisy's right there, like, girl, I've been here the whole time.
100%.
You know? And then
Yeah.
Asa's like, wait, you are there, and I can, like, she finally realizes that she can, like, invest in that friendship more. And, like, I think they were best friends, but they really do, like, kind of cross some invisible line together,
Yeah.
and they're gonna have like a stronger friendship after that, like
Yeah.
after all of this. And I just love, since we were reading it, and it's like, I'm reading this book with my bestie, and then the ending is about like her like really cultivating her friendship with her best friend. You know what I mean?
100%. That's actually their relationship reminded me a lot of me and you, which
I know, right?
Did you find that too?
Yeah.
There's such a good moment in the beginning where Aza's like kind of talking about how the only person who can bring her out of a thought spiral is Daisy. And I'm like, I felt like that was that was so real, because if you know, you know about all my dark moments. Literally the person, like, specifically I'm thinking about when I was 19 and dropped out of college and I was at your house every single week. And like, you didn't know it at the time, but I was like staying up past the time that we would go to sleep and like just staring at the ceiling, kind of spiraling. But like at the end of the day, I was able to go to sleep because I was like in the room with you.
Stop, you're gonna make me cry. But yeah.
But I love. Sorry, I said I love
go ahead.
how stupidly therapeutic. I feel like I'm getting right now on this.
No, I love it. I feel like we have enough episodes that it's like it's time to get real.
Yeah, let's talk about ourselves, guys.
This is who we are. Yeah, and on a lighter note, I love at the end when Daisy says like, this whole time I thought I was in like a romantic thing. Turns out I was in a buddy comedy all along.
I love that.
I just love that because I feel like that's so us, like how we always like we find our pairings in books and stuff, and like that's just us, like the buddy comedy.
I 100%. So not to this might sound like I'm trying to like almost erase your relationships outside of me.
Oh my gosh.
But like, I think if I were to tell a movie or like have a movie about my life, all the paths that I have, which one would I follow? It would be this. It would be this one.
Exactly. I feel the same way.
Oh my god, that makes me so happy.
So if anyone needs to make a movie
about us,
no,
please,
we might give you the rights.
Maybe
if we get 1 million subscribers.
I love how we keep saying that. We're like at 1 million subscribers.
I'm making a lot of promises.
Yeah, that's okay. But yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, I really liked the movie, and I thought, like I said, I thought it was a great adaptation.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't really have too many faults with it. I thought it was great because I think it also stands on its own. Like, you don't need to read the book before you watch the movie.
Yeah, I agree.
So I like having two pieces of media that, you know, are very, very connected but can also stand on their own. If that makes sense.
That does make sense.
Cool.
Love. It was really fun watching it immediately after finishing it. I finished the book on Friday.
Yeah.
And then on the airplane. And then I watched the movie yesterday, which was Saturday. And there were like lines that like were sticking out because I was like, oh, I just read that, you know?
Oh yeah.
Like I feel like this script was very true. Like the dialogue stayed very true to the original, to the book.
I wonder if John Green wrote the script. I don't think he did, because it doesn't seem like something he would do, low-key.
Yeah, I don't know. But also loved the John Green cameo.
Oh yeah,
I literally like jumped, like
really?
Yeah, like I literally was like, and Sage was like, "Are you okay?" Because I did not. I'm like, how did I not know he was in there? I feel like I probably read it at some point that he was having a cameo, but I just completely forgot.
Yeah,
it was great. I loved it. He was so like, it was just like adorable. I was like, he's just such like a dad, like gym teacher. Like,
I'm so fond of John Green. I watched a video essay that was kind of like depicting his whole entire career and like breaking it down and what our perception of him was during like the height of his career versus what it is now that we have, you know, more perspective on it all. And like that man has gone through so much ridicule and so much hate from the internet. I know. And it makes me so sad because he's one of the few people online who, I mean, I'm not saying that everything he's done has been perfect. He's, as a human being, has had moments.
It's probably pretty close.
I mean, yeah, but like, I mean, it's hard for anyone to exist in the world without controversy.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
he is somebody who I think leads with so much empathy and,
Yeah.
you know, always wants to learn. And there's so few people in the world who are like that, especially in
Yeah.
the public sphere, who are writing books for like younger audiences than
Yeah.
him. And I'm just like, guys, I think he's actually one of the few people that we should be giving the benefit of the doubt to,
Yeah.
and being like,
No, I
okay,
agree.
he's done a lot of good, and I appreciate him as a person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
a
I
father
always
to
I
me.
always think like, to me, like John and Hank are like my like Bob Ross or my like Mr. Rogers. You know what I mean?
My Mr. Rogers is so good. Yeah, that's such a great way to say that.
Like you know, just good.
They really are like the fathers to so many people who are from our generation.
Yeah.
Like, they were with us in school. They were with us in private. Like, as in like reading their books on our own time.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I just appreciate them. Also, how do you feel about this book? He's recently said, I think he announced this officially a couple months ago on TikTok, but he said that he knew when he wrote this that this book was going to be the very last YA book he reads, or he writes. So
Yeah.
it's very much like a bookend on that. Like about 15 years, I think, of his life was dedicated to writing YA fiction. How do you feel about that? And like, do you think this is a good place for him to leave that journey?
I definitely think it's a good finale. Like
too.
And it makes me sad because I would love to read more like
yeah.
new John Green books, but
Me too, yeah.
it almost feels like, and I say this just based off the books that I have read by him, it's almost like maybe he was trying to find a way to write this book the whole time.
Yes,
You know what I mean?
I agree.
Because I think a lot of his books have similar themes of like, am I going to matter in the future and that sort of thing. And it's like, I feel like maybe this was like a lot of what he was trying to get at all along.
Yeah.
And like, and it being, you saying like he was writing this kind of for his younger self.
Yeah.
I feel like that probably is a very like, hopefully it was very fulfilling for him to write this.
Yeah.
And to like get it published, and like I if I was him and this was my writing career, I would feel good about it, and
Me
I'd be like,
too.
you know what, this is a good place for me to say that I did it and be proud of what I did. So
Me
it's
too.
sad as a reader, but like I think I'm like I'm proud of him, like, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Do you know also what the very last line of this book is, which I just thought about? I told you last night, I texted you last night that it made me
yeah,
cry.
I remember.
But now that we're talking about this being his finale, this is the last
Yes.
line. He says, I have to go, and you say goodbye, and he says goodbye, Asa, and no one ever says goodbye unless they want to see you again.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what a way to close the
Yeah.
book. Like, that is so good. And also
Yeah.
tells you that, you know what? Maybe it is goodbye, but he's leaving the door open, you know?
Yeah.
So
Perfect.
I love that. I love you, Mr. John Green. And I like this book
Yes.
so much. I
Yeah.
think this is such a great book, and I'm really happy I read it when I was 19 and now able to read it with more
Yeah.
perspective on my teenage years.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
It is interesting. Getting older really does. It really does
Clarify
change your
things.
perspective, just like they all say.
It's like your brain finally develops, and you're like, wow.
But I guess people had a point. Yeah.
It's so true.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, do you have any last thoughts, or are we ready to?
Yeah, I think I'm
Close
all
her
good.
out.
I think we can wrap it up here.
Okay.
Cool.
Well then, thank you everyone for listening to Read the Last Page. Our music and illustrations were created by the wonderful Sage Timothy.
If you don't know our schedule yet, we host a book club episode once a month. And so for our next month, we're going to be reading Tress and the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. So that episode will be out on the first Wednesday of August. So if you want to follow along and know what we're talking about, be sure to pick up a copy and read it by then.
Before we get to the last page, though, we'll see you in 2 weeks for a catch-up episode where it's just besties talking. And you can listen to us on Spotify and Apple Music, or if you'd rather watch your podcasts, you can find us on YouTube at Read the Last Page. For now, we want to say bye from B.
And Dan. Bye.
Bye.